Pre-season is a time of real excitement, and Arsenal got theirs off to a chaotic but valuable start with a 1-1 draw and penalty shootout win against an intense Bournemouth team. And this intensity is really an important factor as Arteta looks to get the Gunners ready for a really intense start to the Premier League season with lots of big early season contests. Before we get into the analysis of the game, I think it's crucial to give you a brief overview of my list of things or improvements to keep your eyes peeled for from Arsenal this pre-season, and this list will be continually referred to across the next 2 or 3 weeks. Number 1, the return of press breakers. One of my aims to improve Arsenal this season is our intent to play out from the back against really high aggressive pressing teams, and with Jurrien Timber's reintegration, Nwaneri's role and Calafiori's addition, as well as others of course, this is a signal, I think, of Arsenal trying to use these profiles to kill presses in the build-up. Number 2, improved transitional dynamics. Arsenal, I think, need to be happier or at least more content being a bit more freeform and dynamic in attack at times, particularly in transition, and a large part of that comes from embracing our bigger space threats, becoming more matter-of-fact per se. This means making Saka more of a passer on the break, utilising Vieira's own range of actions, and building relationships with Martinelli. That one is particularly important. Number 3, wingers platformed closer to goal. As Saka and Martinelli return to this Arsenal team, we want to see our superstar and Bukayo Saka given more licence to access the middle without always White's outside presence, and Martinelli given in-behind access to the half space more. And this links to number 4, which is the left-hand sided watch, creating more complementary pods is going to go a long way to improving our left-hand side dynamics with more settled movements and effective rotations, as well as a strong-footed overlap. This is all key to improving that side to our attack. Number 5 is more of a detail, but more half-space crosses I think is key for this Arsenal team. It's really underrated as a mode of attack, really effective, and it's one of those more brutal forms of attack we've just been talking about. Allowing Martinelli to cut back from the left-hand side is a way to do this, getting Odegaard to drift more and more laterally across the left-hand side, and in terms of half-space crosses from the right-hand side, Saka and Odegaard more volume of course, as well as Ben White tucked into midfield in our 2-3-5. Lastly, number 6, and this is more informed by what we do in the rest of the summer transfer window, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but it's worth foregrounding the roles of individual players like Jurrien Timber and Martin Odegaard. It's really one to look out for. So, that's my list of things to keep your eyes peeled for, but now onto the specifics of our pre-season opener against Bournemouth, starting with Ethan Nwaneri, going from potentially Odegaard depth to a genuine left central midfielder option. Nwaneri obviously started the game as that right interior or right 10, but my analysis is going to focus on his left interior minutes, because if Ethan Nwaneri is going to break into the team, he's not going to displace the immovable Martin Odegaard. So, why is Nwaneri at left centre mid genuinely viable? In my scouting report for Ethan, I covered his lack of angle bias, which, to summarise briefly, comes down to his proficiency in tight spaces, that sort of 360 degree ability to spin either way, with a real low centre of gravity, his power as well, his underrated power in the carry to open the pitch up for himself and take advantage of his technical range. This all makes Nwaneri in the left centre mid possible, especially when you consider the current composition of our midfield in the build-up. Although Odegaard is always going to take the larger proportion of our touches in his free role from right centre mid, with him and Nwaneri on the pitch against Bournemouth, we had those familiar sort of pendulum movements, those swinging movements either side of the number 6, with Nwaneri able to use his press resistance and already really mature use of his body to get on the ball deeper, but most of the time to remain slightly offset and higher between the lines, where he can receive on the half turn and accelerate play. These zones really suit Nwaneri and are similar to the ones that Reiss was pushed to when he was moved to left centre mid, although Reiss often swung deeper and wider more often. But going back to that list at the start, Nwaneri also really helps those left-handed sided dynamics. Why is that? Well, I think a left-hand side of Martinelli, Nwaneri and Calafiori would be the most complementary left-hand side we've had since Zinchenko, Xhaka and Martinelli, with of course Jesus joining in from centre forward. Although neither Calafiori or Nwaneri are specialist overlappers, Martinelli would now have the option of two strong-footed overlaps, and in Nwaneri, you have someone, especially with the profiles of Martinelli and Calafiori, you have someone who connects with movers around him so effortlessly. There's almost a team-wide cognition working and spatial awareness working in Nwaneri's head constantly. And also he gives Martinelli that releaser in behind. Let's consider Nwaneri and Calafiori's relationship though. I think as Calafiori develops, of course a lot of his early minutes are going to come as left back, and Miles Lewis-Skelly against Bournemouth I think became a real placeholder for that Calafiori role early on. And I'm more meaning Lewis-Skelly's relationship with Nwaneri in the left centre mid, where Lewis-Skelly stayed higher and wider more often in the build-up with Nwaneri, and at times he inverted, but it created, a lot of the time, dynamics like this where speeding up play and press breaking appears natural due to these natural relationships. And I think these situations where the fullback dynamically arrives from a pass from someone like Nwaneri really suits Calafiori down to a T, and it would be very similar, I guess, to especially the middle and final third stuff and the relationship that Jurrien Timber and Nwaneri had for the under-21s, with Calafiori arriving into the space Nwaneri has vacated. And although he's going to have certainly less deeper touches and sitting influence than a Jurrien Timber, Nwaneri's profile is one that can run the attack on the left-hand side. It's complementary, but the main reason that I think Nwaneri actually has genuine legs, and I mean genuine legs, in the left centre mid is his out-of-possession work. I'm going to return to the scouting report probably a lot over the time of the season, but Nwaneri's willing, intense, but also robust defensive work really suits the left centre mid role out of possession for Arsenal. That dual role of jumping to the top of our diamond, but also dropping deeper into the pivot of what will long term be next to Declan Rice. Nwaneri is always aggressive high, and he was always disciplined deep, making actually a number of real key interventions in the duel. I'm not suggesting he's Arsenal's long term left centre mid solution, or that he gets sort of first choice minutes there this season. That's not what I'm saying, but there is a genuine pathway in the left centre mid or left interior for Nwaneri this season, and it gives me real hope we can give him a good chunk of game time, especially in specific game states where he's more suited in this position. I mean, rotation in these specific game states against mid to low blocks, he's definitely up against Fabio Vieira in competition for this left interior role, but I think it looks like Nwaneri's moved ahead of Vieira in the pecking order for this specific position so far, and also Vieira's current profile would mean someone like a Jurrien Timber would be more required on the left-hand side as a sitting option deeper. But Arsenal's build-up more generally now, although it improved massively when Martin Odegaard was reintroduced, and we're going to get on to in terms of how Arsenal are looking to evolve as a team on the ball, and Martin Odegaard specifically in a little bit. But throughout the whole game as a whole, the level of control Arsenal exerted on the ball and in their build-up was nowhere near the level desired, but this was to be expected. In my scouting report of Miles Lewis-Skelly, this is what I had to say about his inversions from left-back and the complements around him. At the moment, he definitely needs a balancing act next to him in the pivot, like a Declan Rice. It would be far too vertical and progressive and hum and rush with someone like a Thomas Partey. In Partey and Lewis-Skelly, we essentially had two accelerators of play, deep, taking a large proportion of our touches. And although Lewis-Skelly is going to, hope, but I think he's going to develop the ability to dictate with more minutes deeper as he goes along in his career, Partey has always struggled with this temporization or tempo control. And as lovely and as flexible as our build-up in the second half of last season became, and as genuinely world-class Thomas Partey is at playing against the momentum or eliminating presses with a feint or a turn, he has always had to be balanced out by Martin Odegaard. And a massive potential margin for improvement when we're talking about how do we improve this Arsenal team is Arsenal maintaining the progressiveness of a Thomas Partey with or without him, whilst being able to upgrade our team-wide security of the ball and also Partey's legs out of possession. And now it doesn't look like we're going to be signing necessarily a marquee midfielder to replace all those qualities in one player, but that is okay. And although we're probably still a -1 down on another build-up dominator or organiser since the loss of someone like a Granit Xhaka, our newfound flexibility in build-up does probably approximate this. And there's also the key question of our long-term midfield composition, a debate that for now I'm sort of tired of, and I don't think I'm going to, at least for now, talk any more on, because at the moment our current iteration of build-up seems to have our dynamics pretty settled, especially with the midfield profiles that we're looking at signing or linked with hovering around that low to mid-range price and leaving that real ceiling raiser and transformative player maybe down the line. But back to Bournemouth, because if you didn't notice, when Odegaard came on and when you factor in Reiss moving back into the six, Timber getting more minutes in midfield, our build-up is still working pretty well. We know we have that option of the left centre mid penduluming deeper into the pivot, and that gives Odegaard the ability to roam a guard across to the left-hand side, and at times, as I've said in videos bygone, we become more relational in a way, with our positioning more centred around the position of the ball, or actually the positioning of Odegaard at times. And it's this off-the-cuff ability to become more freeform that I want the same freedom transferred to into our attack in specific moments, of course. Again, we saw these lateral overloads from Arsenal with Odegaard moving onto the ball from right to left, which we know makes him more vertical, but he always seems to link the team together beautifully well still, and this is obviously down to the quality of the player, but I think this lateral movement of Odegaard moving against the grain of a press opens up so many angles that naturally suits the way his body opens up. And we also saw the example of that inundation of bodies deep to create that space and then exploit it between the lines with the advantages of someone like a Nwaneri gives you to be able to spin away and press break. But to finish, I want to look at some very specific in-game details and players that could be really important come the end of the season. First, Jurrien Timber. Mikel has definitely sent a statement that if Saliba was ever to be injured or rested, Timber is the first choice cover as that backline leader for Arsenal. Why? Well, he does have that same guile and composure to bait and manipulate a press, find angles through the lines, and keep Declan Rice close to him out of possession, give him box presences and natural big space defenders around him, and he'll show you how Timber just has the brain and the body to adapt to any part of the pitch, it seems. And most frequently from Timber, but our right centre-back, which of course moved to central centre-back in a back three, had these lovely details yesterday where the number 6 would often drop in between the centre-backs, and this would sort of push and dart the right centre-back, again Timber most frequently, higher. This was very similar to the relationship we saw between Rodri and Nacho Fernandez for the Spanish national team at the Euros, and these little details, these ways to break presses, are something again that we're looking to introduce into this Arsenal team. I mean, you could tell Timber was itching to be higher the whole game, but of course remained really disciplined, and in this example here we see him become that inverted profile briefly, and these higher areas, come on, these are where Timber seriously raises our level as a team. His bravery between the lines to carry and take control of play is a profile that's totally unique in the squad. And also Eddie Nketiah. He may be on his way out, but as many of you know, I'm a massive Eddie Nketiah fan, and in the first half, for me, he was the best player on the pitch. Without a Havertz focal point, Nketiah bullied Zabrani by dropping deep to link play, to pivot the attack and spin his man or create lines to isolate our wingers. He pins Zabrani deeper, creating space for Nwaneri and Vieira to play between the lines. He was also our primary outlet and runner in the front line, rotating with Nelson when Lewis-Skelly was high and wide in a role that I thought really looked tailor-made for a Sesko or an Osimhen type. I mean, obviously I can't comment on everyone, and there's going to be so much more time for that in the games that come up in pre-season. There are a lot more questions and a lot more things to cover. But it was nice to see players like Salah Eddine dropping into some really Rice-esque positions in left centre-back or left-back, taking on that hybrid role initially in the left centre-mid to show now that Arteta, without Odegaard or without these key players, is willing to change the on-pitch dynamics to get the best out of certain individuals. But all of this is for another video. I really hope you've enjoyed this analysis of our pre-season opener and what the potential knock-on effects could be down the line, covering some key points like Nwaneri, like our build-up. I really hope you've enjoyed. I only ask you to like, comment and subscribe right at the end of the video, because hopefully that means you found it enjoyable or informative in whichever shape, way or form you derived that from. But I've been Harvey Gratian. I'm so glad you've come over and watched the video. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.